Now, on the face of it, today's Citizens' Town Hall on Electoral Reform, organized by YIAGA Africa and the Senate and House Committees on Electoral Matters, appears to be good news. There were expressions of deep concern about the electoral system and the challenges facing Nigeria's democracy, recognizing that the disenfranchised people of Nigeria need to have a guaranteed say on who gets to govern them. But beyond a town hall overflowing with civil society organizations, how much backing are the calls to reform the electoral system in general and the specific issues raised in particular likely to get amongst the political parties in the National Assembly? How much of a priority is all this likely to be?
We have incremental reforms, but there is an erosion of public trust in the electoral process. Nigerians are asking, why is it that we have reforms year in, year out, but the more reforms, the more difficult it is to obtain electoral justice? Now, this question is being asked by Nigerians is not misplaced, because Nigerians do care about their country and we care about our electoral process. And I think the presence of stakeholders in this room is a testament to the fact that Nigerians have not lost faith in this entire process. As we prepared for this town hall, a lot of people ask questions, why should we engage this process any further? And this is our response to you, that we have an existing constitutional order, and we believe that there are mechanisms within this constitutional order to self-correct and to reinvent.
And that's Samson Itodo, who's the executive director of YIAGA Africa, the civil society group that organized that town hall on electoral reform. And Mr. Itodo joins me now in the studio. Thank you very much indeed
for coming in.
Having me. You look like you could use a couple of sort of shut eyes, like a bit of sleep, but thank you for coming in. Tell us more about what happened at that town hall today and the point of it, whether it achieved what you set out to achieve.
Well, so the town hall that happened today was a commencement of a series of public engagements on issues relating to electoral reforms. And the Senate and the House Committees on Electoral Matters thought to commence the process by engaging with citizens. And we thought that it was a unique opportunity to get citizens in the room to have deeper conversations about the priorities for reforms. And so to that extent, I'd say yes. I was pleasantly surprised to see the level of interest and public engagement at the town hall. And it just attests to the fact that although Nigerians are angry and they've lost trust in the process, they still believe in our capacity as a country to address some of the challenges that we face. And so you could see passionate Nigerians speaking about what they want to see in the electoral act and also the laws. So it just tells you there's that belief. And I see today as a positive, a very positive sign. And it's actually good news for the country that, yes, the legislators are prioritizing this. Some would say, oh yes, we've seen this before. But to the Nigerians out there who are skeptical about engaging in reform processes because they've not delivered holistic outcomes, and those outcomes that they deliver are somewhat ephemeral in their respect, is to tell you that we've got a constitutional order. And what we believe in as an organization is that if citizens engage and place a strong demand before their leaders, and this demand is placed before them over a consistent period and is driven by intense organizing, you're able to get change. Because the act that we speak about, the 2022 Electoral Act, was a product of citizens' engagement. And that's what democracy is about. It's about competitive ideas. It's about debate. It's about dialogue. It's about negotiation. And so we need to appreciate the fact that this is what democracy enables. If it's in a military dictatorship or in an authoritarian rule, you're not going to have, nobody is going to come or create an opportunity for you to dialogue with leaders. So this is what democracy does. But it has its own push and pull. But we are quite delighted that, yes, citizens were able to engage. The legislators were also able to appreciate some of the issues. So to that extent, it did achieve its objective.
Well, you know, the rather depressing thing about all of this, beyond the fine words that you've just uttered, quite inspiring as well, is the fact that some would argue that, as you pointed out, it's a series of anticlimaxes in this country, isn't it? I mean, people built up their enthusiasm on the strength of what the chairman of the Electoral Commission told them before the 2023 presidential election. There was this citizen engagement. I remember you sitting where you're sitting now, also very positive and very hopeful. And then it ended up as an anticlimax. I mean, do you believe that there is seriousness amongst the politicians, for example, to try and reform the electoral system, even if such reforms don't favor their chances of winning elections?
So there are two parts to it. First, there's a dilemma of political reform. And one of those dilemmas is, first, you have, politicians who have the responsibility, legal responsibility, to tweak the law. The major concern that some will have is, how does this secure electoral victory in future elections? And so that's one biggest dilemma. And this is why the fact that the National Assembly has commenced this process early, way ahead of the 2023 elections.
2027
election is a welcome development. And if there's certain a time frame of 1 year, we now have a duty as citizens to hold them to account, to that 1 year time frame that they've said, because they have said by the end of next year, they hope to conclude this, because it will actually advance and help our electoral process. So that's one. Two, if the ruling political class are disinterested in reform, that's if, right? It behoves on us as citizens to actually make them interested. And this is where I love what one of the lawmakers said, in the course of the town hall this afternoon. And he said, the time is now for citizens to put the fire under the feet of their legislators and ask them, what are you doing to secure our voting rights? What are you doing to ensure that what happened in the past election does not repeat itself? Because that's why they voted you into power. So we have to make our interest their interest and their priority in cases where there is a divergence between their interest and public interest. So we have a duty. We can't just sit back and assume that our political leaders are going to be driven by public interest in their choices that they made. It's never happened anywhere in the world. And that's why democracy provides a space for this sort of engagement. So from the citizens, they place the demand, and then the elected leaders are the supply side of governance. So we have to make this issue a priority for them, because at the end of the day, the status quo does benefit a certain class of politicians. And they will want this status quo to remain.
Absolutely.
And the status quo does not advance national interest. It does not advance our collective interest. And you can't just fold your hands and see your interest being undermined as a citizen. So this is the time to engage your legislators and ask them to prioritize reform issues. And the issues are quite simple. One, INEC needs to be unbundled. And we said it this morning, that INEC needs to breathe. The institution is suffocating because of the enormous responsibilities
but you
of the
don't
Electoral
hear
Commission.
people from INEC coming to say those things. I mean, we saw Tahiru Jega there, Professor Tahiru Jega, who was the former INEC chairman, but we didn't see Mahmoud Yakubu there, did we?
No, the INEC, well, the chief technical advisor of the INEC was present at the town hall. But again, there were also issues relating to some cases that were already in court. And some institutions didn't want to comment on those issues because they are sub-judice. And quite frankly, they are right to actually think that way.
Yeah, but in terms of unbundling INEC.
But unbundling INEC,
I mean,
INEC have
they
been
should
vocal.
come themselves to
But
say,
INEC have been vocal about unbundling.
Because I would have thought that a day like today would be an opportunity.
The Electoral Offences Commission, INEC strongly supports it. INEC has been also at the forefront supporting, the creation of an Electoral Offences or Electoral Offences Commission. So the commission clearly makes that point. But it's not for INEC. It's about what is right and what is good for the process.
Yeah, but INEC have to also tell the people what they can and can't manage.
No, but they have mentioned that. But if INEC decides to be silent, it doesn't mean citizens shouldn't actually speak up.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean lawmakers, because they exist for the people. And it's the public consensus that there are certain responsibilities that need to be divested from INEC and vested in other institutions. The second is about the independence of the Electoral Commission. And across board this morning, up to this afternoon, there was unanimity that there is need to review the appointment process of electoral commissioners and the chairman of INEC. There were also issues around the conclusion of election cases before swearing in. There's a vast majority of Nigerians who believe that. There are also Nigerians who are demanding for diaspora voting, early voting for security officials. I was really impressed today where one of the representatives of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps spoke about the voting rights of security officials, and that you have close to plus or minus about 300,000 in a general election
who don't get to vote.
Who don't get to vote.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so they also have their citizens and they should vote. So early voting, there are also discussions around prisoners voting. So let's open up the process.
Well, what about things like independent candidacy? I mean, which would allow interested people to get around and past the stranglehold of the political parties?
The challenge with independent candidacy has never been the National Assembly. The challenge of independent candidacy has always been the state houses of assemblies and the governors. Because the 8th Assembly, in fact, the 7th Assembly, the 8th Assembly, the 9th Assembly passed independent candidacy. But when it went to the state houses of assemblies, it didn't survive. And so we need more advocacy across the state house of assembly, perhaps also the governors, because Nigerians collectively believe that one way to open up the process is also introduce independent candidacy. And I strongly believe, although with certain restrictions, so you don't have ballot papers, flooded with images of people, or you have long ballot papers that also come with their own logistical challenges. So the Justice Uwais Committee's report provided a certain threshold, the number of signatories that you must secure before
in order to qualify to become an
independent.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think it's the same sort of thing you get in the United States. So after today's town hall engagement, people who were not able to be there or to contribute, I mean, I understand there's a website they can go to leave their comments and things.
Yes, so the joint committee did share an email address for citizens to send in their memorandum or proposals for reform, and it's INEC Senate Committee at gmail.com. And that's the email. The email was released prior to the town hall, and they received lots of submissions from Nigerians across the world, and not just Nigeria. And so that email address is still available, INEC Senate Committee at gmail.com. And so citizens can send in their recommendations. But like the chairman did say, that this is just one of series of engagements. They are considering zonal engagement with citizens. They are considering setting up a technical committee. There's a gamut of work based on the work plan that the committees, have designed that marshals out how they are going to engage this process. And I'll say that it's one very organized committee in the National Assembly. And we're quite pleased and delighted to be working closely with them, given what the two gentlemen who lead both the House and the Senate committee have actually demonstrated. Because in terms of the commitment, there's a commitment there, and it's an opportunity. And I think that for us as citizens, when we see opportunities of this nature, we capitalize on those opportunities to advance reform. That's how you make change happen within a democratic process.
Well, we want to say we're very impressed with the work that YIAGA Africa, inspired and driven by a lot of what you do, has been doing for this country. And I want to thank you very much indeed. And I want to let you go and get some sleep now. Samson Itodo is the Executive Director of YIAGA Africa, and his group organized that town hall on electoral reform today. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.